Today is the 27th day of the month of Tishrei, and we are finishing off chapter 3 in the Attire, discussing the laws of getting dressed and proper attire. We will be doing paragraphs 2 through 8. Paragraph 2. There is a prohibition called Chukas Hagayim, imitating the ways of the non-Jews. The exact parameters of this prohibition are a bit complex, but the basic idea is that if there's a non-Jewish custom, it could be some sort of celebration. Over here, the Tishrei is talking about clothing, so he's talking about non-Jewish clothing that is worn by non-Jews and isn't worn by Jews, then it would be a problem for Jews to start wearing that sort of clothing. Rav Moshe Feinstein says that this doesn't really apply today so much to the clothing that we wear. Because if we're talking about non-Jewish clothing that might be considered promiscuous, anyways, we can't wear promiscuous clothing. And nowadays, in the countries that we live in, there is no distinct Jewish dress and a distinct general population dress. For many years throughout history, in many countries, there was a distinct Jewish way of dressing and a separate non-Jewish way of dressing. So in that situation, if a Jew would have started wearing the styles of the non-Jews, that would have transgressed this prohibition of Chukas Ha'akam. And this would apply to clothing, to hairstyles, even, says the Tishrei, shoelaces. If there was a shoelace color or type that Jews wore and a separate type of shoelace that non-Jews wore, it would be prohibited for a Jew to wear the non-Jewish shoelace. But nowadays, definitely in America, according to Rav Moshe Feinstein, this doesn't seem to have too strong of a practical application. This may come up with certain holidays. Participating in Halloween, for example, certainly any Christian holiday would be an issue, but even non-Christian holidays might have a problem if they're sourced in some pagan idea. However, that's beyond the scope of today's discussion. Today we're talking about clothing, and by clothing it doesn't seem like there's much of a problem. Paragraph 3. One should not wear the most expensive clothing, says the Tishrei, and one should make sure to not wear inferior or dirty clothing or torn clothing and the like. We need to have this balancing act of wearing respectable clothing, but not necessarily the fanciest or the cutting edge style. Paragraph 4. Since in the temple service we find that the right side was always given precedence, this is in regards to going up on the altar. The Kohanes, the priests, ought to go up on the right side and go to the right going around the altar. During different rituals, there are applications on the right thumb and right big toe of the Kohen or of somebody bringing an offering. Therefore, when we get dressed, as well as other activities, we always are supposed to be giving precedence to the right. So for example, putting on our shoes, we put on the right shoe first. When we're putting on a shirt, we slip in the right sleeve first. The exception to this is when we are tying something down. Because you see by tefillin that we put tefillin on the left hand and we tie tefillin on the left hand, therefore when it comes to tying our shoes, we tie our left shoe first. So we put on the right shoe, we put on the left shoe. We tie the left shoe, and then we tie the right shoe. A lefty who puts tefillin on the right arm is supposed to tie the right shoe first. So the proper protocol for shoes for a lefty would be put on the right shoe, put on the left shoe, tie the right shoe, tie the left shoe. When we take off our shoes, we do the opposite. So a righty would first untie the right shoe, then untie the left shoe, then remove the left shoe, and then remove the right shoe. Paragraph 5. Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, teaches that when we put on two articles of clothing at the same time, it could cause us to become forgetful. Therefore, one should not put on two articles of clothing at the same time. Paragraph 6. Jewish men are supposed to have their heads covered. This could be a yarmulke designed for Jewish men to wear, or it could be even something like a baseball cap, as long as the head is covered. The most important times to make sure the head is covered is when reciting any sort of blessing or prayer or studying Torah, as well as walking outside. But in truth, really, it's appropriate to be covering your head at all times, except when taking a shower or something of that sort. Rav Moshe Feinstein does talk about somebody who wants to take off their yarmulke when they go to work, but that is beyond the scope of this discussion, so if that's relevant to you, then feel free to reach out to me and we could discuss the parameters of how that works. Paragraph 7. Just like we saw, when choosing clothing, one should not wear anything too expensive or fancy and nothing which is torn or ragged. so too there's a balancing act in the way we just walk around and present ourselves. We aren't supposed to strut around as if we rule over the world, and on the other hand, we're not supposed to walk around hunched over like a shlemazel. I don't know how you say shlemazel in English, I apologize. We have to walk around respectfully, but appropriately. Paragraph 8. It's not appropriate for a man to walk between two women that are standing close together, and it's not appropriate for a woman to walk between two men that are standing close together. If you're holding something in your hand, which could be a barrier, a book, according to some halachic authorities, even a phone could do this, definitely a bag, then it would not be a problem because it's not considered directly between two women or two men. This concludes today's episode. Have a great day and see you tomorrow.